She had always loved animals, but today felt different. She walked slowly through the shelter, her eyes scanning the rows of cages, hoping to find a cat that would feel like the right match. The sound of soft meows and the occasional clink of a food bowl echoed through the building. There were cats of every size and color, some playful, some shy, some clearly used to being loved. Yet as she moved from one cage to another, she couldn't shake the feeling that she hadn't yet met the one meant for her. Then, at the far end of the room, she noticed him. He was unlike any cat she had ever seen. His fur was a strange mix of colors that didn't quite match anything familiar, and his eyes were large, round, and almost otherworldly. The shelter staff had already warned her about him, their voices carrying a mix of concern and exasperation. "Be careful with that one of them said. "He's different. Most people don't like him. He's very skittish and a little scrappy. We call him Gizmo." The woman crouched down to look at him more closely. Gizmo was curled up in the corner of his cage, watching her with cautious eyes. Unlike the other cats, he didn't approach when she held out her hand, and he didn't purr or rub against the cage bars. Instead, he stayed back, his body tense but alert, as if he were ready to bolt at any moment. She could see why the staff warned people. Other animals in the shelter avoided him, giving him a wide berth when he tried to move around. Potential adopters had walked past, shaking their heads, some even laughing at his odd appearance. But instead of fear or distaste, she felt a tug at her heart. There was something about him that seemed lonely, misunderstood, and waiting for someone who could see beyond his looks. "Why is he called the alien cat?" she asked, tilting her head. The staff member sighed, shaking her head with a small smile. "Because he's different. Most people are scared of him. He has this strange way of moving, and he can be unpredictable. He's smart, too smart sometimes, but he's been here a long time, and no one wants to take him home." The woman didn't flinch. She leaned closer, letting him see her face and hear her gentle voice. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to be your friend." For a moment, Gizmo froze. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, he shifted closer to the bars. She noticed the way his tail flicked nervously and the soft twitching of his ears. He wasn't ready to trust her completely, but he was curious, and that was enough. She spent the next few minutes just sitting near his cage, talking to him softly, letting him observe her without pressure. She could feel her heart opening more with each passing second. Other people walked by, glancing at Gizmo with a mix of amusement and distaste, but she didn't care. She saw him, not as a scrappy, strange-looking cat, but as a living creature with feelings, fears, and perhaps a heart waiting for someone to care. When it was time to leave, she took a deep breath and made a decision. She would adopt him. She would give this misunderstood, rejected alien cat a chance at a home, and maybe, just maybe, he would teach her something about patience, trust, and the quiet power of compassion. As she filled out the adoption papers, Gizmo watched her with a wary curiosity. He didn't know it yet, but this was the start of something new, a connection that would change both their lives forever. Even as the staff continued to warn her, she couldn't shake the feeling that Gizmo was the one. There was something in his eyes, something quiet but unmistakable, that made her pause. Most people only saw the scrappy fur, the odd colors, the cautious movements. But she saw intelligence. She saw awareness. There was a depth there, a kind of alertness that made her feel like he understood her in ways no other cat could. The staff noticed her lingering gaze and tried once again to dissuade her. "He's not easy," one of them said gently. "He can be mischievous. He sometimes knocks things over, gets into places he shouldn't, and he doesn't like being held. People give up after a few days," but she just smiled. "That's okay," she said softly. "I'm not looking for a perfect cat. I just want to understand him." Gizmo watched her quietly from his corner. He didn't rush to approach, didn't jump into her lap or rub against her legs. Yet he didn't run away either. There was a curiosity in his gaze, a flicker that made her feel like he was testing her, studying her just as she was studying him. She knelt on the floor, keeping her voice soft and calm. She didn't try to force interaction. She simply let him see her and hear her. "It's all right," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere. You can take your time." She offered a finger near the cage, just enough for him to sniff it if he wanted. He hesitated, then slowly inched closer, sniffing the air between them. That tiny movement felt monumental, and she couldn't help but grin. For a few minutes, it was just the two of them, silent in the small corner of the shelter. The sounds of the other cats faded away as she focused solely on him. She noticed the way his ears twitched, how his eyes shifted constantly, always alert, as if analyzing everything. There was a cleverness in him that was almost human in its perception. She realized then that his strange appearance and wary behavior had nothing to do with badness or mischief. They were simply defenses he had built over time. After being rejected again and again, a staff member came over, a little concerned. "You really want to go through with this?" she asked. "He's been here a long time. Most people leave him alone. Are you ready for a challenge?" She looked at Gizmo, watching him tilt his head slightly, observing them both with cautious interest. "I think he's worth it," she said. Her voice was firm but gentle. "I don't see a challenge. I see a friend." The staff exchanged a knowing look, realizing she wasn't going to change her mind. They stepped back, allowing her to spend more time with him. She continued to speak softly, moving her hands slowly, letting him get used to her presence. There was no rush, no pressure, just quiet patience. By the time she stood up to leave, Gizmo had inched a little closer to the bars, his whiskers brushing her fingers for the briefest moment. It wasn't much, but it was progress. She felt a strange bond forming, something unspoken yet undeniable. She didn't know it yet, but this moment, these first impressions, would be the start of a deep connection. One that would take time, patience, and love, but would ultimately change both their lives forever. As she walked out of the shelter, she kept looking back at him. He was still small, still wary, still a little alien in appearance, but in her heart she already knew that he had chosen her as much as she had chosen him. After spending so much time watching him, speaking to him, and letting him get used to her presence, she felt certain about her choice. She had made up her mind. She was going to adopt Gizmo. It wasn't just about giving him a home. It was about giving him a chance to feel safe and loved for the first time in his life. Even if it meant challenges, scratches, or long days of patience, she was ready. The staff, of course, had their doubts. They had seen countless people try to adopt Gizmo and quickly give up. One of them leaned over, raising an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" she asked softly. "He's not an easy cat. He's been rejected by so many. He can be unpredictable, and he's very particular about his space. Some days he might just hide for hours." She smiled gently, kneeling down to watch him again. Gizmo was sitting quietly, his large, alien-like eyes following her every move. There was caution there, yes, but also a spark of curiosity. That spark was all she needed. "I'm sure," she said. "I know it won't be easy, but I think he's worth it. I want to try. I want him to feel at home with me, and I'll give him all the time he needs." The staff exchanged a look but said nothing. They had learned by now that sometimes love and patience could work where caution and warnings failed. Slowly, they helped her with the adoption papers, explaining the basic rules and giving her tips about Gizmo's habits. "He tends to be sensitive to loud noises and sudden movements," one explained. "It's best to let him explore at his own pace. And don't be surprised if he disappears for hours at first. That's just how he is." She nodded, listening carefully, absorbing every word. She thanked the staff for their advice and promised to take good care of him. Then came the moment she had been waiting for, walking out of the shelter with Gizmo. He didn't leap into her arms or rub against her like a typical cat might. Instead, he followed her cautiously, his body low to the ground, his tail twitching in careful curiosity. Every few steps he would pause, glance back at the shelter, then inch forward again. It was clear he didn't fully trust this new world yet, but he was willing to explore it, slowly, step by step. She talked to him softly as they walked, her voice calm and comforting. "It's okay, Gizmo, we're going home now. You'll be safe there. No one's going to hurt you." He stopped for a moment, his ears flicking as if he were listening to her words. Slowly, he started moving again, following her through the parking lot and into her car. Even during the drive, Gizmo stayed quiet and cautious. curling up in a small space on the seat but keeping his eyes on her the entire time. She kept her movements slow, occasionally offering her hand for him to sniff. He didn't immediately respond, but she noticed the tension in his body slowly easing as the minutes passed. By the time they arrived at her apartment, she could see the tiniest signs of curiosity. He sniffed at the door, the hallway, and finally the small room she had prepared just for him. She had blankets, toys, and a cozy bed ready, but she didn't rush him. She simply let him explore, speaking to him in soft tones, celebrating every small step he took. That evening, as she watched him cautiously walk around his new home, she realized something important. Adoption wasn't just about taking an animal home, it was about understanding, patience, and building trust. Gizmo had chosen to follow her, even if only a little, and that was the first sign that a new life, a better life, was just beginning for him. She smiled quietly to herself, knowing that this decision, though simple in action, would be the start of a journey that could change both of their lives forever. The moment they stepped inside her apartment, Gizmo froze. Every new smell, every sound, and every shadow seemed to make him tense. He moved cautiously, his paws soft on the floor, his tail flicking nervously. He sniffed at the corners, jumped lightly onto a low chair, and then almost immediately darted under the sofa. Emily watched him quietly, knowing that this was exactly what she had expected. A cat like Gizmo needed time, patience, and understanding. She didn't try to pull him out or force him to come to her. Instead, she sat on the floor near the sofa, speaking to him in a calm, gentle voice. "It's okay," she whispered. "You don't have to be afraid. You're safe here. You can take all the time you need." She kept her movements slow and unthreatening, making herself small so he wouldn't feel cornered. For the first few hours, Gizmo stayed hidden. He peeked out now and then, glancing at her with wary eyes before retreating again. Emily didn't mind. She left out a few treats near the edge of the sofa, hoping he would venture out on his own. Slowly, he crept forward, sniffing the air, then snatched a treat and dashed back under the sofa. Emily smiled quietly. That small step was already progress. Over the next few days, she made sure everything in his new home felt safe and familiar. She created little hiding spots with blankets, placed his food and water in quiet corners, and left his favorite toys nearby. Every morning, she spent time on the floor with him, letting him watch her, talk to her, and get used to her presence. She never rushed him, never tried to force affection, understanding that trust couldn't be hurried. Slowly, Gizmo began to explore more. He would peek out from under furniture, cautiously testing the space, before venturing further each day. He sniffed the carpets, climbed onto low shelves, and even started batting at his toys. Emily noticed the smallest signs of curiosity and celebrated them quietly. A flick of his tail, a slow blink of his eyes, or a tiny meow, all were victories in their own right. One afternoon, he surprised her. While she was sitting on the couch reading, Gizmo emerged from his hiding spot and jumped onto the armrest, just a few inches from her hand. She froze, careful not to make sudden movements, and offered a slow, gentle touch. He sniffed her fingers and then almost imperceptibly nudged them with his head. Emily felt her heart swell. It was the first real sign that he was beginning to trust her. Over time, Gizmo's playful side started to show. He chased toys across the floor, batted at dangling strings, and even attempted a few jumps onto furniture with surprising grace. Emily laughed softly, watching him, realizing that behind his cautious, alien exterior was a cat full of curiosity and affection, waiting for someone to see him for who he really was. By the end of the first week, Gizmo was exploring the apartment more confidently. He would rub against her legs when he wanted attention, curl up near her while she worked, and occasionally allow her to pet him. It wasn't perfect. He still had moments of fear, but the progress was undeniable. Emily realized that adjusting to a new home wasn't just about teaching him the space, it was about teaching him that he could trust again, that he could feel safe, and that love didn't have to come with fear. And as she watched him playfully pounce on a small ball of fabric, she felt a quiet happiness, knowing that this scrappy, misunderstood, alien cat was finally beginning to feel at home. As the days passed, Emily started noticing things about Gizmo that surprised her. It wasn't just that he was cautious or shy. It was the way he seemed to understand things in ways most cats didn't. One morning, she was preparing breakfast when she heard a soft click. Turning around, she saw Gizmo pawing at the kitchen cabinet, and to her astonishment, the door opened just enough for him to peek inside. At first, she laughed softly, thinking it was a lucky accident. But over the next few days, she realized he was doing it deliberately. He could open drawers, move small objects, and even figure out little puzzles she left for him, like sliding lids off boxes to reach treats. Emily had never seen a cat with such cleverness, and it made her love him even more. Her friends and neighbors soon started noticing his unusual behavior, too. When she posted videos online of Gizmo solving little puzzles or gently nudging doors open, people were amazed. They commented on his intelligence and unique personality, and some even called him the alien cat because of his strange but impressive talents. It was a name that had once carried fear in the shelter, but now seemed full of admiration and wonder. Emily also noticed subtle ways Gizmo communicated with her. He had a particular way of looking at her when he wanted attention, a soft chirp when he was curious, and even a gentle paw tap when he wanted something. It was clear he wasn't just a pet. He was trying to express himself, and Emily listened carefully. She learned his little signals and started responding in kind. If he tapped her hand, she would reach out. If he chirped, she would talk back softly. This simple exchange deepened their bond in ways that words couldn't explain. Over time, Gizmo's attachment became more obvious. He would follow her from room to room, curl up next to her while she worked, and even sleep on the edge of her bed, keeping one cautious eye on her. It wasn't constant, he still had moments of shyness, but it was clear he trusted her. Emily realized that trust wasn't something that could be demanded. It was earned over time, with patience, respect, and gentle care. One evening, as she sat quietly reading, Gizmo jumped onto her lap without hesitation for the first time. He rested his head on her arm and closed his eyes, purring softly. Emily's heart swelled. This small gesture, simple as it seemed, meant everything. It was proof that the bond they had started building from day one was real. He wasn't just a pet to her anymore. He was a companion, a friend, and a little mirror of her own patience and care. Neighbors began asking about him when they visited. Intrigued by the videos Emily shared online, many had heard stories about the shelter's alien cat who had scared people away, and now they were curious to meet him. When they saw him in person, they were taken aback by how clever and affectionate he had become. What was once a strange, scrappy cat avoided by everyone had transformed into a charming, intelligent little creature that captured hearts wherever he went. Emily realized that Gizmo's intelligence and unique personality weren't just entertaining, they were a reminder that every animal has hidden depths, waiting for someone patient enough to discover them. Each day brought a new surprise, a new trick, a new way to communicate, or simply a quiet moment of trust and connection. It was proof that love, patience, and understanding could bring out the best in even the most misunderstood creatures. By the time the week ended, Emily felt a profound sense of joy. Gizmo had not only adapted to his new home, but had begun to show the remarkable cat he had always been, hidden behind fear and rejection. She knew that together they had created something special, a bond that would continue to grow, full of surprises, trust, and the quiet, extraordinary magic of a little alien cat who had finally found where he belonged. As Gizmo grew more confident and playful, Emily felt the urge to share his story. She knew that many people had seen him as strange or even scary at the shelter, but now he was thriving in ways that no one could have predicted. She carefully took videos of him solving little puzzles, opening doors, and even chirping softly to get her attention. Each video showed not just his intelligence, but the personality that had been hidden under fear and caution for so long. When she posted the first video online, the response was immediate. People were amazed at Gizmo's cleverness and charm. Comments poured in from all over, some expressing disbelief, others laughing in delight, and many sharing stories of their own misunderstood pets. For the first time, Gizmo wasn't the alien cat that scared adopters away. He had become an inspiration, a little hero in his own right. Emily watched the reactions with quiet satisfaction. She realized that Gizmo's journey was bigger than just their little home. It was a reminder that many animals, just like people, were judged too quickly. They were written off because of how they looked, how they acted, or how they reacted to fear. Gizmo's story showed that with patience, understanding, and love, even the most misunderstood creatures could shine. Neighbors and friends started visiting more often, curious to meet the famous cat they had heard about online. When they saw him in person, they were surprised by how affectionate and intelligent he had become. Gizmo would chirp at them, walk carefully around their legs, and even respond to small games. The fear that had once surrounded him had completely melted away, replaced by admiration and warmth. Even people who had once doubted Emily's decision to adopt him were now inspired. They saw the time, patience, and care she had put into helping him feel safe and loved. They realized that what some had thought would be impossible, a cat like Gizmo thriving in a home, was actually achievable. Emily's dedication became an example for others, showing that love and persistence could change the life of a rejected animal forever. Gizmo's transformation also sparked conversations about adopting challenging animals from shelters. People began to understand that not every pet would be instantly affectionate or easy to handle. Some needed time, some needed patience, and some needed someone willing to see past appearances and first impressions. Gizmo became a symbol of hope, proof that every animal deserved a chance. No matter how strange, shy, or misunderstood they might seem, Emily felt a deep sense of pride and joy as she watched him interact with visitors. He would chirp when someone came near, showing off a little of his cleverness, and occasionally nudge her hand for reassurance. Each small gesture was a reminder that this bond, built with care and patience, was powerful and meaningful. It wasn't just about a cat learning to trust. It was about showing the world that love could transform fear into admiration. Every day, more people followed their story online. Comments shared words like inspiring, heartwarming, and amazing. And many viewers said they had been motivated to adopt or spend more time helping animals in shelters. Gizmo had unintentionally become a teacher, showing everyone who watched that understanding and compassion could change lives. By the end of this stage of their journey, Emily realized that Gizmo's story had reached far beyond her home. He wasn't just her pet. He was a reminder to the world that first impressions could be wrong, that patience mattered, and that even the most feared or misunderstood creatures deserved love. His strange looks no longer made people fearful. They made them curious, inspired, and hopeful. Emily smiled as Gizmo curled up on her lap that evening, purring softly. She knew their journey was far from over, but she also knew that what they had already accomplished together would leave a lasting impact. Gizmo had not only found a home, he had changed hearts along the way. It was an ordinary evening, and Emily was tidying up the kitchen after dinner. The soft hum of the refrigerator and the quiet ticking of the wall clock filled the room. Gizmo had been exploring his little corners as usual, batting at a toy on the floor and occasionally watching her with those large, intelligent eyes. Emily was lost in her thoughts, thinking about work and the week ahead, when suddenly she slipped on a small puddle of water near the sink. Before she even realized it, Gizmo darted forward. In a surprising burst of speed, he leaped onto her shoulder and nudged her gently, startling her just enough to regain her balance. She caught herself against the counter, heart racing, and looked down at him. His eyes met hers, wide and focused, and for the first time she saw a look in him that was more than curiosity or caution. It was concern. Emily laughed softly, partly from relief and partly from amazement. "You little hero," she whispered, scratching behind his ears. Gizmo purred loudly, rubbing against her arm, almost as if he understood exactly what had just happened. In that moment, Emily realized something important. Gizmo's unusual behaviors, the way he observed everything, and the intelligence that had seemed odd before. It wasn't just quirks. It was awareness, a depth of understanding that she had underestimated. She thought back to the shelter, to the warnings from the staff, to the people who had avoided him because of his strange looks and cautious ways. How wrong they had been. Gizmo had always been intelligent and capable. He just needed the right environment, the right patience, and the right person to connect with. That minor accident had revealed something profound. Gizmo was not only capable of learning, playing, and solving puzzles, but he could also care, protect, and respond in ways that were deeply meaningful. From that day on, their bond grew even stronger. Emily noticed him following her more closely around the apartment, always alert to her movements, always near enough to offer comfort or companionship. If she sat down to read, he would curl up beside her. If she worked on her laptop, he would perch on the edge of the desk, watching over her with quiet attentiveness. She realized he wasn't just a pet, he was a companion in the truest sense of the word, a little guardian who had chosen to care for her just as she had chosen to care for him. Gizmo's small gestures, nudging her hand, sitting nearby, chirping softly when she seemed distracted, took on new meaning. Emily understood that every quirky habit he had displayed was part of who he was, a combination of intelligence, curiosity, and affection that simply hadn't been appreciated before. What some had seen as strange or difficult was actually remarkable, a reflection of a mind that was observing, learning, and connecting with her in ways most people would never notice. Over time, Emily found herself talking to him more, sharing stories from her day, laughing at his little antics, and feeling comforted by his quiet presence. Gizmo responded in his own way, purring, chirping, or rubbing against her leg. It was a conversation without words, but one that said more than any speech could. He had become a true friend, one she could rely on, trust, and feel supported by, even in the quietest moments of life. Looking back, Emily realized that adopting Gizmo had been about more than giving a home to a feared cat. It had been about discovering a connection, recognizing intelligence and affection where others saw only strangeness, and learning that love often comes in unexpected forms. Gizmo was no longer just a rescued cat. He was a teacher, a companion, a protector, and above all, a friend who had changed her life in ways she could never have imagined. Time passed, and Emily could hardly remember what life had been like before Gizmo came into it. He had fully adapted to his new home, moving confidently through the rooms, exploring every corner, and even greeting visitors with his unique, clever personality. The cautious, scrappy cat she had first met at the shelter had grown into a confident, playful, and affectionate companion. It was clear that he felt safe and loved, and that made Emily feel a joy she had never expected. Gizmo's curiosity and intelligence continued to shine. He would chase toys, figure out new games, and even interact with other pets in the building. Occasionally, other cats would peek from nearby apartments, and Gizmo, with his quiet confidence, would carefully approach them, sniff, and even play, showing a gentleness that surprised everyone. Emily watched him with pride, amazed at how far he had come. He wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. The story of Gizmo didn't stay within the walls of her apartment. Emily shared updates online, and people were inspired by the transformation. The shelter where Gizmo had once been labeled too difficult noticed the response. They began promoting the adoption of other misunderstood or challenging animals, hoping to give more of them the chance to find homes like Gizmo had. Volunteers shared stories of shy or odd-looking pets finding love, and the community began to see that every animal, no matter how unusual or fearful, had the potential to bring joy to the right person. Locally, neighbors and friends started visiting more often, eager to meet Gizmo. Some were skeptical at first, remembering the stories of the alien cat at the shelter. But when they met him, they were charmed. His intelligence, curiosity, and affection were impossible to ignore. Children would giggle as he batted at small toys. Adults would marvel at his clever little tricks, and Emily would smile quietly, knowing that her patient care had made all the difference. Gizmo became more than a pet. He became a symbol. People in the community began to see him as proof that love and patience could transform even the most feared or misunderstood lives. His story encouraged other families to adopt animals who might have been rejected in the past. giving hope to countless creatures who had been waiting for a chance. Emily realized that what she had thought was simply a personal journey had turned into something much bigger, an inspiration for change in how people viewed shelter animals. Every day was filled with small joys. Gizmo would curl up next to Emily in the mornings, stretch lazily on sunny windowsills, and sometimes sit quietly by her side in the evenings, purring softly. His playful antics brought laughter, and his quiet companionship brought comfort. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a bond built over patience, love, and trust. Emily knew that no matter what the future held, Gizmo would always be a part of her life in a meaningful way. In the larger sense, Gizmo's story reminded everyone who saw it that appearances can be deceiving. What once seemed strange, alien, or unlovable could, with understanding and care, become extraordinary. He was living proof that even the most rejected beings could find happiness, belonging, and love. As Emily watched him one afternoon, chasing a small toy across the sunlit living room, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She knew that adopting Gizmo had changed both their lives forever. From a scrappy, fearful cat at a shelter to a confident, intelligent, and loving companion, Gizmo had found his place in the world, and in Emily's heart. Together they had created a life filled with joy, trust, and unconditional love. And in that life, both Emily and Gizmo had found their happily ever after.